Welcome to the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast. I am your host, Dr. Shayla Toombs-Withers. As a double board certified family and obesity medicine physician with over 12 years of experience in medicine, I teach motivated individuals how to achieve their desired quality of life while preventing and reversing chronic diseases. It's tea time. And so tell us about you're touching on the flip side of this, those other foods that can actually cause more damage to those cells.
No, I was just going to say, so kind of like I was just talking about the Twinkie, right? So these highly processed foods are actually pro-inflammatory, right? So they process sugar, they have saturated fat, they have added oils, and all of this can lead to more inflammation in the body and cause more damage to our gut and to our cells and to our blood vessels. And so over time can lead not just to diseases like cancer, but also the number one killer in Americans, heart disease, right? Metabolic syndrome, like all of these lifestyle related chronic diseases that are affecting us at epidemic levels today. And so, I think the one food when it comes to cancer in particular that I think about, the WHO named processed meats as a class 1 carcinogen back in, I think, 2015.
Yeah, I think so. It's been quite a while, but people still seem to not even realize or know that's been deemed.
And that's kind of part of the world we live in. It took 20 years of evidence and science to prove that tobacco smoke causes lung cancer for them to actually put a label on the package. And so, there are a lot of things that we know today do increase risk of cancer, but if you're waiting for there to be a label on the package or whatever, it's not coming for a long time, because unfortunately there's a lot of powers that be that influence the way that, food and tobacco, alcohol, all these things are marketed in our society. Unfortunately, it's not always for our best interest. So you have to advocate for yourself. And so when it comes to cancer risk reduction, in particular, colorectal cancer now, processed meats, we know things like bacon, sausage, salami are a carcinogen. So I would definitely avoid those.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. And so I feel like we've talked a lot about food. So even beyond food, what are some of those other lifestyle interventions that you found to be effective in cancer prevention?
For breast cancer in particular, if we go back to that, there's really 4 things outside of what you can do with your diet that have a lot of evidence behind them for cancer risk reduction. Number 1 is exercise. So, and I'm sure you've talked about exercise before, but exercise is no doubt hands down associated with a decreased risk of not just premenopausal breast cancer, but also postmenopausal breast cancer. And then exercise is the one thing that is also associated with a decreased risk of all the other chronic lifestyle related illnesses that we just talked about, right? Metabolic syndrome, heart disease, stroke, like all the things. So exercise is amazing. And exercise doesn't mean going to a class and having to go to the gym. And I mean, exercise is movement, right? There was a big study that was done a few years ago that showed even increments of 10 minutes at a time of some sort of movement can reduce your overall risk of all-cause mortality. So that is very powerful. Everyone has 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that. This is not going to be a popular opinion, just putting it out there, trigger warning. There is no safe amount of alcohol, especially when you talk about breast cancer. Alcohol is toxic to breast cells, and so it is known to increase risk of breast cancer. And I don't think people know that. I don't think that's a common knowledge.
I think it's because it is one of those things, like you said, there's no, and people tend to want to say, well, nobody really wants to totally get rid of their glass of red wine or whatever. And so I think kind of like the bacon thing, it's just like not going to be readily available.
Right. So I guess, the recommendation here would be consume the most minimal amount of alcohol possible. And I'll be honest, like for me, it was probably like at the latter end of my journey. Like, I transitioned to a whole food plant-based diet from a traditional kind of Canadian, South Asian, Indian diet, eating meat, eating all those things and dairy. And so I kind of cut those things out slowly before I got to the alcohol. So it was definitely the last piece because it's so intertwined with, like you said, like our social life as well, right? And so what I'll also mention over the past few years of my own research, it's pretty amazing, this sober curious movement right now, I think with this younger generation, which is so cool.
Yeah.
You know, where I live just outside of Washington, DC, they even have a bar that is like a fully like alcohol-free.
The mocktail bar. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it is
cool.
so cool. And so there's all these spirit companies and beer companies that are creating alcohol-free drinks. And so it's really not hard to have an enjoyable social event with, you know, alcohol-free drinks that are fun and set the mood and all of that. So no safe amount of alcohol. And then tobacco, I don't even think we need to mention that. Like everyone knows that smoking cigarettes is bad. It increases risk of several different kinds of cancers. And then the last piece, again, this is a big one in our society today. You know, about 75% of this country, America, is overweight, and obesity is linked with over 10 to 12 different types of cancers, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, with breast cancer being a very well-known one. And so I think while our diet is not directly linked, like it's not a causal link to breast cancer, meaning if you eat this way or that way, it's definitely going to cause cancer. What we know is that obesity and excessive weight definitely causes cancer, and our diet is strongly linked to that excess weight. So, and there was recently a big article again telling us that the average American's daily calories, more than 50 to 55% of them come from processed and highly processed foods. I mean, more than half their diet comes from processed and highly processed foods. And these foods are, like we said, have all the things that are linked to gaining more weight and, you know,
and all these other health conditions.
All these other health conditions, poor gut health, which ultimately then increase your risk of cancer. And actually, this article even stated that eating this diet is associated with an increased risk of cancer. So I like to say it's an indirect link.
Yeah.
It's not a
And
direct
there are
link.
even more studies that have even come out about gut health, and it's linked to obesity. If you know, folks have been listening, there's another episode that I did with the gut health specialist too, where we talked about that too, and the links of gut health to obesity. So you're right, there are these multiple factors too that play a part.
Absolutely.
If you're frustrated with your weight, taking more medications than you'd like to, have been told that you are at risk for the development of a chronic preventable disease, or just are not feeling in the best of health, then I'm talking to you. Why? Because you're tired of fat dieting. You know it's time for a change, and you want a sustainable plan to improve your health. If you have found yourself at this place in life, well, I have developed a program that's just for you. It's called The Essence of Health, and it's your prescription for transformation. My goal with this program is to give you the tools needed to create sustainable lifestyle changes within a group coaching setting, along with one-to-one individualized coaching to give you a personalized path to health that's just for you. The benefits are priceless, so join today. Head on over to 𝐏𝐸Hcoaching.com to learn more. The essence of health is in you. All right. So what are some practical tips, just to kind of even wrap us up here? What are some practical tips that you can offer to individuals looking to lower their cancer risk and transition to a plant-based diet? What do you usually tell the folks who you coach?
The first thing I say is, like, you know, when you walk into someone's life or you find them on social media or whatever, right? Like, recognize that they didn't just become like this. Right? Like, if someone was to look at my life and they're just like, well, I can't do all of that. Recognize that I created this version of me over the last 10 years, right?
It's a process.
It's a journey. It's a journey. And so don't be discouraged and don't compare yourself to anybody else. And I know we hear that all the time, but like I tell my kids, you know, you only have to be better than who you were yesterday. And even if
I love that.
Yeah, and even if that's just 1% better, I'll tell you as a palliative care doctor that every small step you make towards moving your body more, reducing the amount of alcohol you're having, eating more plants, every small step you make will make such a big impact 10, 15, 20 years from now to reduce your risk of all of these chronic diseases. And what I can tell you from my perspective of caring for the sickest people for almost a decade is that the last 10 to 15 years of the average American's life is spent deconditioned and debilitated, meaning mostly in bed, in and out of hospitals, taking a whole boatload of medications. And all any single one of my patients has ever expressed to me is wanting to be independent, wanting to be able to go for a walk, wanting to have more time with their families, wanting to be able to just do normal everyday things. And so I'm not even saying, to do all of this so you can live that extravagant life and start that business and travel and do all these extravagant things that we all dream of. I'm saying do these things so that you can just continue to do the basic everyday things that are so important to us as human beings for our dignity, for our autonomy. I mean, like I have goosebumps talking about it because people don't realize how big the little things really are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so much, about the quality of the life that you get to live. And it's, kind of like what you said towards the beginning of our talk about, we tell you these things not because if you, eat plant-based and you work out, it's not because you'll never die or you'll never get a chronic health condition, but it's because a certain quality of life, that you would like to live. You would like to maintain that independence. I hear people tell me all the time, I'd like to be able to make sure I'm able to keep up with my kids or take care of my grandkids. And so these things that you talk about are the keys to helping you to maintain a certain quality of life so that you can enjoy those facets.
Absolutely. And it's like, what, like I like to talk about this a lot. Like, think about it from an abundance perspective, right? So think about all the things that you can do. Like if you have some restriction with exercise, say you can't get on a treadmill, instead of focusing on what you can't do, what can you do? Right? Like come at it from an abundance perspective. Same thing with plant-based nutrition. Think about all the things you can eat versus focusing on the things you can't. And the other thing is that it's about progress, right? So it's not about perfection. My family and I eat mostly a plant-based diet. I have a 5 and 7-year-old, which means we go to way more kids' birthday parties than we would like to. And unfortunately, in this culture, in this society, that means a lot of sugar, cupcakes, cakes, candy, pizza, sugar sweetened beverages. Like that is just what is normal to serve at these events. And so when you're surrounded by it, it's important to recognize that, you don't have to come at it from a scarcity perspective. It's about what you're doing most of the time. So whatever you're doing 80 to 90% of the time is really what's going to create the biggest impact. That 10 to 15% of the time, you should enjoy your life, right? Eat the cupcake, eat the slice of pizza. Like it's okay. That's not what's going to make a difference. It's when that's what you're doing all the time is what leads to problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that too, because people do, they feel like, well, I can't ever, I even have people say, oh, I can never, ever, ever give up my steak. And, it's like, yeah, you can, if you have to have it some of the time, once a month or whatever, then do that if that makes you feel that was what you need to do. But then let's talk about all those other things that you can do. So
there's one more distinction I'll make there, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I tried that and I don't like it, or I just can't. And what I tell my kids all the time is, whenever I put something new on the table, they know they don't have to eat it, but they just have to try it, right?
Yep.
And
Same.
what they know, right? And what they know now is that they like, and science has shown us this, that you have to eat something. If it's new to you, you have to eat it 8 to 10 to 12 times for your palate to adapt and adjust and develop a taste for it. And at the same time, everything you eat is really what determines the kind of gut bugs that you have in your microbiome. And so as you change the way you eat, your gut bugs are going to change as well. And you're going to develop an increased diversity, better, healthier, happier gut bugs, which will then actually make you love this food.
Exactly.
I can now tell, like, we were traveling recently, and one of the days I had this plant-based like burger, which was like, it looked really good and it was really good, but it was like fried and it was not, from a health perspective, very good.
Yeah, probably more oil than you're used to
Right. And I had
consuming.
French fries and I had a milk, like a vegan milkshake. And like, I was just excited that like this even existed where we were. So I was like, yes. And then so I like ate it. And like about 2 hours later, I felt so bad. Like I felt so horrible. And so that's the other confirmation that once you cultivate a healthy gut microbiome, when you go back to your old, you know, foods that you used to love, your body, your gut microbiome is
it'll tell you, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but it's a process. So,
oh,
you know,
for sure. I always tell people
where
the first time I had tofu, I was like, oh, this is disgusting. I am never gonna eat this. And now I love it. You know, I know how to cook it and make it flavorful. But yeah, it is. You have to try these things several times and just reintroduce your palate, you know, to a variety of foods. And your body will thank you, and then you'll grow to learn how to enjoy it.
And I promise you, you know, like when you go to the average restaurant, you see the kids menu and it's like chicken nuggets, French fries, mac and cheese, and like pasta with red sauce. That's like the pizza, or like average, right? But kids actually have a very diverse palate if you actually trust that there's no such thing as kid food, and that food is just food, right? Like my 5 and 7-year-old love mushrooms, they love olives, they love sauerkraut, they love pickles, they love farro, they love quinoa, they like, you know, they eat everything, and it's just because they were exposed to it. And
same. Yeah, we eat a lot of different ethnic foods in the house, you know, Indian
Ethiopian
food or Ethiopian food. Yeah, and they love it. You know, I've had even adults who wouldn't try some of these things, but my kids will.
An abundance mindset, that is the biggest tip.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Simran, for coming on the show. Now tell the audience how they can connect with you online.
So I'm mostly on Instagram. I can't keep up with all the social platforms. So on Instagram, I'm Dr. Simran.Malhotra. So you can find me there. And then I have a website. It's 𝐀𝐤𝐿.com, where I have lots of resources and you can connect with me there.
Wonderful. And for the audience, I'll put all of that in the show notes. So be sure to check out Dr. Simran there. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Shayla.
Thank you for joining me today on the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast. Click the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a moment of the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast. Check out the show notes to obtain your free tips for healthy living guide to get you started on your health and wellness path. Follow me on social media at Essence of Health Wellness Clinic on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and at dr.tw@𝐿HWC on TikTok. Interested in becoming a member of the Essence of Health coaching program? Well, head on over to www.𝐏𝐸Hcoaching.com. The essence of health is in you.